At times when I'm working with my trauma patients, they'll tell me they get triggered, and seemingly for no apparent reason, just out of the blue, and it happens, and they can become really tense and anxious. Their heart can start beating. They can get really nervous and shaky and trembly. So, all of a sudden they're experiencing this upsurge, but for seemingly no apparent reason. There's no trigger, they'll say, setting it off, and in spite of that, somehow or the other, it just happens. So the answer is that it isn't for no apparent reason, and in fact there is a trigger, but you just don't see it. Now, you can be triggered at a conscious level. So let's say, for example, you were involved in a car accident or something like that, and you happen to pass by a car accident. That's a very very conscious trigger right there, right? So that can happen, and that can trigger you. But you can also be triggered at the subconscious level, that level that is not accessible to you, that level that runs you on autopilot. For example, if let's say you're driving a car, and there's a passenger in a car, there's somebody in your car, and you're sitting and talking to that person, and you're having a really involved conversation, and you're really engrossed in that conversation. Well, while you are involved in that conversation, who's driving the car? It's still you, right? But it's the subconscious you that's actually piloting the car, doing everything right, monitoring the environment. And so you have this sort of dual you. One, the conscious you is involved in this conversation, and perhaps conversations. Maybe there are more people in the vehicle, and all of you are talking very animatedly, and you're very involved and invested in that conversation. But you're also piloting your vehicle safely, and so the part of you that's doing that is the subconscious fund of you, the subconscious part of you. So that subconscious part can pick up triggers in your environment without you realizing it consciously. So if you're feeling really anxious, and if you're feeling really heightened, and if you're feeling really shaky and trembly, just out of the blue all of a sudden, it's not because there's no trigger in the environment. It's just that you cannot see it. It's kind of like the wind. Sometimes all of a sudden you feel cold, you cannot see the wind, but you can feel the experience of it. So sort of like that. Now, as far as triggers are concerned, triggers can be of all different sorts. They can be visual, obviously, but they can also be auditory, sounds, for example. They can be olfactory, which is smell. And triggers can be, tactile, somatosensory. People who have been, say, sexually assaulted, for example, for them, touch can be a trigger that can re-trigger their trauma, so to speak. So triggers can be of all different sorts. You can be triggered in your sleep, as a matter of fact. You can be having a benign dream, and in that benign dream, there could be something that triggers you. Say you're just having not a nightmare. You're just having a normal dream. You're going for a drive somewhere or the other, and you come across a bend, and maybe you had an accident when you were coming across a bend, and it was a really bad accident. You're traumatized, and as a consequence of that accident. But that just normal dream all of a sudden can trigger you, and you can go from there, from a normal dream, into a full-on nightmare, as a matter of fact, and wake up with your heart beating out of your chest and perspiring and so on. So triggers, that's kind of how they work, and that's how they function. So if you cannot figure out why you are traumatized and why all of a sudden you are heightened, and you cannot identify a trigger, don't worry about it. Don't stress too much about it. It just simply means that the trigger is not in your conscious awareness. It's at the subconscious level. That's actually what's happening.